said, "I christened thee Virginia." Nobody objected, the name stuck. Right here on our right, we have the Way It Was Museum. They do have some of the better displays up here on how the mining operations were conducted in the 1800s. Plus a pretty good bit on how the folks lived up here on the Comstock prior to the 20th century. Well, it was June 8th, 1859, just above these buildings on our left. Two miners named McLaughlin and O'Reilly were panning for gold in a creek. Well, they found enough gold there, they felt they could go ahead and file a claim. Before they had an opportunity to leave, however, a rider showed up. He introduced himself as Henry Comstock. He told the miners that they were mining on his 160-acre ranch. Well, that was a lie. The miners didn't know it. They did, however, talk it over, decided to form a partnership, and they opened up the Ophir mine. Now, it wasn't too long before they figured out that Comstock was not only a liar, but a bit of a bragger. You see, he went down to Carson City, started telling people in Carson City that he discovered gold up here on the mountain. Well, they started calling it Comstock's Gold. Now, lie or not, though, the name stuck. This whole area up here is now referred to as the Comstock Gold. Now, over to the far right, past the rest area, is the Silver Terrace Cemetery. We'll get a little better view here on this lower street, though. The Silver Terrace is made up of a number of different sections, including a Catholic, a Protestant, a Knights of Pythias, an Oddfellows, a Mason. They have a railroader section there, a miners section, a fireman section. They even have a little Irish section in there. All in all, though, we do have more than 15 cemeteries right here in the Virginia City area. Most are located right there in the Silver Terrace, and it's open for walking tours. Now, we do have a few more. To the left, over across the canyon, right near the top of that first hill, is the Chinese cemetery. Down the bottom of that canyon and up about a quarter of a mile is a Jewish cemetery. Now, we do mention one more. You see, in the 1800s, just up this street, there was a red light district. Well, one of the ladies that worked there's name was Julia Villette. Now, Julia Villette, she was brutally robbed and murdered one night. The firemen thought a lot of Julia. They even wanted to bury her in their section of the cemetery. Ladies of the town, however, objected. And after a short fight and two grave sites, the firemen lost that argument. They ended up burying Julia over there across the canyon. Her gravesite is about halfway up that hillside. There is a little white picket fence around it, but that snow kind of makes that visible. There is a little more to the story, however. You see, the firemen, they didn't take Julia out of town quietly. No, sir, they organized a parade down the main drag. They had 15 wagons, a marching band, all the fire companies of Virginia City and Gold Hill, all gathered together, taking Julia out of town for one last ride. I think that parade might have had a little message in it to the wives, but I'm still not sure about that part. Now, getting back to McLaughlin, O'Reilly, and Comstock and that Ophir mine. They worked that mine for a short period of time, found an opportunity and sold it for $45,000. Now, that was a lot of money in the 1860s. They left town quite happy. Their smiles didn't last. You see, the new owners of the mine, while mining that gold, they were removing a blue clay. Some claim they even paved the streets with that clay. Well, one of the miners took a sample down to Grass Valley, California. Nevada City down there had an assay office. When he got back, he changed everything. They found out that that blue clay was worth about $900 a ton in gold, over $3,000 a ton in silver. And that's not by today's standards either. That's when gold was $20 an ounce, silver $1 an ounce. But it was the start of the big bonanza up here on the Comstock. Folks came up here by the thousands. Some just looking for work. Others came up here to seek their fortunes. George Hearst came over here by way of Nevada City. Now, he made a fortune up here in the mines. His son, William Randolph, used some of that money to start the Hearst newspaper dynasty and the eventual building of the Hearst Castle over in California. Now, right over here on the left, this flat area was the Virginia Truckee Railroad Yard. what was known as Queen of the Short Lines. It was in operation from 1869 to 1939 between Virginia City and Carson City. At one time, they had 22 steam locomotives operating between 40 and 45 trips a day. In 1872, they opened up a spur from Carson City to Reno to tie in with the Central Pacific Railroad. That spur stayed in operation until 1950. The red building on the left is the old freight depot. I'll show you the ticket office a little further up here into the tour. Now on the right, these blocks along here were known as the Red Light District. There, the ladies worked in little cabins that were referred to as cribs, as in baby cribs. About the size of them, I guess. Down the hill to the left, there's a large tan tailing pile. That comes from the Consolidated California and Virginia mines. The Con Virginia was the largest mining operation on the Comstock. They mined $110 million worth of gold and silver. In the late 1800s, we had more than 22 mines in operation. They dug over 750 miles of shafts, drifts, and tunnels underneath Virginia City and Gold Hill, many of which still stand, being held up by timbers brought over from the Lake Tahoe Basin. This yellow building on our left is the Comstock History Center. In the window, the number 27 steam locomotive. Right up here on the right is a monument to the Red Light District. A little more on there about Julia Villett's murder, too, a little bit of whodunit. Down the hill to the left, there's a multi-story brick building with a white porch. That's St. Mary Louise's Hospital. That was run by the Sisters of Charity late 1800s. Remained a hospital till the early 1940s. It's now an art center and a retreat, and they do have overnight accommodations. We also have a number of hotels, motels, and bed and breakfast with very comfortable accommodations here in the Virginia City Gold Hill area. Some of them might even entertain you with a little late night ghostly adventures. There are two churches over here on the left. The tan church is St. Paul's Episcopal Church. The red brick, St. Mary's in the Mountains. That was Nevada's first Catholic church. The Great Fire of 1875 destroyed both previous churches. They were quickly rebuilt, however. You see, when they rebuilt St. Paul's, they didn't use any nails in the framing. It's all held together with wooden pegs. When they rebuilt St. Mary's, they had more than 4,000 parishioners. And that church was rebuilt to the size you see today. St. Mary's will be open until 4 o'clock for self-guided tours. They have a gift shop, a free museum, and the monk's wine cellar downstairs. St. Paul's is not open at this time. Building right here in front of us was the rectory for St. Mary's. It's now a private residence. Right up ahead on the right is the B&T Passenger Depot. They're shut down for the winter. Beginning Memorial Day to the end of October, they'll operate a tourist train between Virginia City and Gold Hill. It's about a 35-minute narrated tour. Hopefully be able to run it all summer. We'll see what happens. This yellow building over here on the right is the ticket office I mentioned earlier. A few years ago, it was bought back by the railroad and is now the ticket office again. It was a private residence for a number of years. Now on the right on the street above, there's a brick building with a white porch surrounding it and a nice tall chimney. That's the Mackey Mansion. John Mackey came to Virginia City, began work as a miner. But John Mackey, James Flood, James Fair, and William O'Brien became known as the Silver Kings. John Mackey outlived his 3 partners. When he died in 1903, he was worth in excess of $80 million. The University of Nevada in Reno has the Mackey School of Mines bearing his name. That's one of the last few mining colleges left in this country. His granddaughter married songwriter Irving Berlin back in the 1920s. Right over here on the left's the Comstock Gold Mill. They have an operating mining museum there, but they are closed for the winter. To the left across the canyon, there's a tailing pile, a gray building, a concrete and steel head frame. That's the Combination Mine. The Combination Mine was the deepest mine in Virginia City. It goes down 3,261 feet. The silver dollars that I mentioned earlier at the Queen are a tribute to that mine. As they reach the lower levels, due to hot water in the area, temperatures reached 145 degrees Fahrenheit. The miners could work for about 10 minutes at a time while being sprayed with water and chewing on ice. They could take a 20-minute break before going back to work. They operated 3 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. Miners didn't complain too much. After all, they were some of the best paid miners in the country. They made $4 a day. Most miners made about $1 a day. Over on the far left is the B&T maintenance yard. That is the site of the original maintenance yard for the B&T in Virginia City. Not open at all for tours, however. Also right here on our left is the Collar Mine. The Collar Mine was the 5th largest mine on the Comstock. They mined $17 million worth of gold and silver. They should be open a little after 3 today for guided underground tours.
Yeah, I looked on there.
Alrighty now. The red building with the gray roof over here on the right is the Collar Mansion. That was the mining office and the residence for the owners of the mine in the 1800s. Ahead of that, we have the 4th Ward School, built in 1875. It has 4 floors and 14 classrooms. It was built to accommodate over 1,000 students. It is one of the first schools in the West to have forced air heat, water fountains on all 4 floors, and flushing toilets. That school was closed in 1936, due in part to this open pit mine to our left. It is one of the last schools of its kind in this country, and is normally open daily from the 1st of May to the end of October for tours. Alrighty, in the heyday of Virginia City, between here and the cemetery and up and down the side of the mountain, we had close to 30,000 residents. In back of us in Gold Hill was another 10,000. We had 109 saloons, 50 dry goods stores, including a Tiffany's outlet, 35 hotels and boarding houses, 22 restaurants, 6 churches, 5 schools, and 17 breweries. We also imported about 300 tons of whiskey every year. The gold and silver from the Comstock altered the monetary standards of the world, fostered many new industries, helped build San Francisco in the 1800s, helped rebuild San Francisco after the 1906 earthquake and fire. On October 31st, 1864, Nevada was admitted to the Union as the 36th state, due in no small part to the gold and silver of the Comstock. The senators were necessary in ratifying the 13th Amendment. After the Civil War was over, Ulysses S. Grant came out here to this building on the right. That's the Savage Mansion. He spoke from the 2nd floor balcony, thanking the folks of the Comstock for their help in the North winning the Civil War. That's now business office, and they don't open it up at all for tours. Now just up ahead though, we do like to tell the story about a couple of miners who got into a little argument. One miner purchased a piece of property, began building his home. When the second found out about it, he bought the adjacent property. When the